Welcome. Today we are cracking open the history books, or, well, the plastic shells of gaming history. We're going to dive deep into the silicon-level rivalry of the 8-bit and 16-bit console wars, and really look at the specific hardware that made these iconic games possible.
All right, so here's our roadmap. We'll start with how consoles clawed their way back from a devastating market crash. Then, we'll get into the bitter fight for 16-bit supremacy. Check out the clever hardware tricks that defined the era. And finally, look at the first baby steps toward using discs.
So, first things first, let's set the stage. Back in 1983, the video game market had pretty much completely collapsed. It was a digital wasteland, for real. So, the big question is, how on earth did it come roaring back to life?
Well, the answer, as you can see right here, came from Japan. After the big crash in the US, Nintendo and Sega basically reignited the entire industry with consoles like the Famicom, which you probably know as the NES. And this was the first time consoles were really marketed by their bits.
So what was the big deal? What actually made these 8-bit machines so different from the Atari generation? It wasn't just about a faster processor. The really crucial innovation was all about how they handled graphics. They fundamentally changed the architecture by cleverly splitting up the work.
See, instead of the main brain of the console, the CPU, trying to do everything, these machines introduced a totally separate chip just for graphics, a picture processing unit, or PPU, and this was an absolute game changer. It meant the console could handle things like smooth scrolling and Super Mario Bros. Without slowing the whole game to a crawl. That single change is why developers could suddenly build these huge, dynamic worlds that felt like they went on forever.
And the new ideas didn't stop with graphics. For the very first time, you could actually save your progress. This was all thanks to a little battery inside the game cartridge that kept your save file alive. This kind of non-volatile memory enabled these massive, sprawling worlds and epic stories that you just couldn't finish in one sitting. But of course, the 8-bit era couldn't last forever. Let's jump ahead to the next generation, where the rivalry between Sega and Nintendo just exploded into the legendary 16-bit war. And this is where the hardware competition got really personal. This was a total clash of design philosophies, a real tale of two CPUs. You had Sega with its much faster Motorola processor, leaning hard into raw speed, something they famously marketed as blast processing. Nintendo, on the other hand, took a totally different route. They used a slower main CPU, but they surrounded it with an entire team of powerful, specialized chips for graphics and audio. It was a classic showdown, brute force versus a whole set of specialized tools.
And here's what that competition gave us, the players. We got games with this amazing new sense of depth from parallax scrolling, these super vibrant colors pulled from massive palettes, and of course, those iconic, high-quality soundtracks that, let's be honest, people still listen to today.
But the war wasn't just fought with the hardware that came in the box. Oh no, both sides found these incredibly clever, almost sneaky ways to push their consoles way beyond what they were originally designed to do.
Nintendo's Super NES had a secret weapon called Mode 7. It was this awesome hardware trick built right into its graphics chip that could take an entire background layer and then scale it and rotate it in real time. This is exactly how games like Super Mario Kart and F-Zero created their groundbreaking pseudo-3D look without needing actual 3D processors.
Okay, but that was pseudo-3D. What if you wanted the real deal? You know, true 3D polygons. For that, you needed way more firepower. So, if the power wasn't inside the console itself, where could you possibly put it?
The solution was, honestly, kind of genius. Just put extra processors right on the game cartridge. This strategy was amazing because it dramatically extended the life of the console. Every new game that had one of these chips was basically its own mini hardware upgrade.
And here are the most famous examples. Chips like the Super FX and Star Fox and the Sega Virtual Processor and Virtua Racing were basically specialized math wizards. They were digital signal processors designed to do one thing really, really well: crunch numbers fast. They handled all the complex calculations for 3D, letting these 16-bit systems pull off tricks the base hardware could only dream of.
All right, the final major hardware shift in this whole era was the introduction of a completely new and much, much larger storage medium.
CD-ROM add-ons like the Sega CD offered just a ridiculous leap in storage. I mean, just look at this chart. We're going from maybe 6 megabytes on a cartridge to over 650 on a CD. This blew the doors wide open for things that were just impossible before, like CD-quality audio, and, for better or worse, full-motion video clips.
But, and this is a huge but, there was a massive trade-off. What you gained in all that space, you lost in speed. CDs were physically slow, and they introduced the world to the dreaded load time. It was such a stark contrast to the instant 0-8 access you got from a good old ROM cartridge.
So, what's the big picture here? What should you take away from all this? Well, these generations weren't just about making prettier graphics. They were about these fundamental shifts in computer architecture that, believe it or not, still influence console design today, from specialized hardware to memory innovations and that timeless battle between storage space and speed. This whole period really set the stage perfectly for the next great battle, the 3D era. And it leaves us with this really fascinating question. As technology got cheaper and more powerful, would raw processing power finally win out, or would that philosophy of using specialized, custom hardware continue to be king? It's a question that would define the next generation of gaming. Thanks so much for watching.